Welcome to Candid Leadership, and an informative episode today on building and growing in national security. Today's guest, Lauren Zabierek, is a United States Air Force veteran, former Department of Defense civilian intelligence analyst, an alumni who helped start up the company Recorded Future, and now is a Harvard Kennedy School graduate and cybersecurity project executive director at the Belfer Center. Today's episode, she'll discuss understanding the challenges and opportunities faced by all players in whatever space you find yourself in. She'll talk about transformational moments that occur sometimes by leaving what's comfortable for you and to try something totally new. She'll discuss the pivots while building your own knowledge and skills to the person who you are now. And she does discuss how the first 6 months are incredibly tough, but both hard work and confidence begets even greater confidence. And she'll talk about mentorship and how it takes someone to see you and the potential in you while you're on the receiving end of a great mentorship relationship. Lastly, she looks at the changes ahead in national security and efforts to help others with professional development, commitment to diversity, and character. We thank you all for spending time with us today on Candid Leadership. And again, you can always sign up for my newsletter on each episode at www.colonelcandid.com and find me on social media at Colonel Candid. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe to Candid Leadership. It's great to have you on the team. Now, enjoy this great discussion on building and growing in national security with guest Lauren Zabierek. Lauren, it is so fantastic to have you here with us today on Candid Leadership. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor.
I have followed the things that you have done, and I must admit, when I read your bio, I am quite humbled at the fact of all the great things that you've brought forward, from your service to the nation to the things that you've done in academia, and now what you've done with dedicating your time and effort to make sure that more women are feeling welcome and ready and prepared to join not only a national security space, but also into the cyberspace as well. And not just the literal, but also the figurative space that exists around cyber. Thank you for that so much.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot.
As you've come into this space, I know we've talked in the past about some of the things that you've seen with respect to those moments in time where you've had to transform yourself. One of the biggest areas I'd love to cover is with respect to transformational leadership. So you've talked to me about a transformational moment you've had. Would you mind sharing that with our audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think throughout my career, a lot of moments have been transformational for me. But I think some of the biggest moments happened when I was in the intelligence community, and then as I was sort of transitioning out of the intelligence community. My first transformational moment was in 2010 when I was at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. I had recently come back into the IC as a civilian. I had been in the military before as an Air Force intelligence officer. And so, I was in an office doing, kind of standard analysis. And then in August of 2010, my little brother, Andrew Nicole, was killed by an IED in Afghanistan. And so, once sort of the fog lifted, I guess you could say, I made it my mission to avenge his death, really. And so I moved over to the Office of Counterterrorism, where I learned an entirely new methodology, and I got to deploy a number of times to Afghanistan and to, work on dismantling some of those terrorist networks. I loved what I was doing. I thought it was so impactful. It was fun, but it was also really, really hard. And I loved the people I was with, the people I met, the things that we did. But then it was also very challenging too. It sort of took a toll on relationships. I got sick, things like that. And then really by 2015, my husband got this job up in Boston. And after trying to haggle with the agency and the FBI up here in Boston, it became very clear to me that I was not going to be able to pursue a joint duty assignment, and I was going to have to leave the intelligence community. At the same time, I had been going to Georgetown University at night for the security studies program. As part of that program, I had taken a class taught by Colonel Dee Dee Halfhill, who's now a friend of mine. She's wonderful, called Women in Leadership and National Security. So these two sort of things are going on at the same time. I feel like I'm sort of banging my head against a wall and, I'm not getting ahead, but now I have to leave. And then I'm also sort of realizing, wow, there's a lot of qualities and attributes that I do bring to the table as a woman in the intelligence community. And that's something that I hadn't really, I think, understood or appreciated before. And so kind of fast forwarding to that, had to leave the intelligence community, moved up here to Boston. And I joined a startup, a cyber threat intelligence startup called Recorded Future. So mind you, I had left all of my friends. I left DC. I left the intelligence community and the government to join a startup with about 55 people in Boston in the winter in cybersecurity, where I had no experience. And I actually joined as what is known as a solutions engineer, which is essentially I would go with a salesperson to demo software. I had no idea what I was doing. But
now that is a leap. I must say much respect for that big step.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was very, very, very challenging. But looking back, I think it was, when we talk about transformational moments, it was one of the most transformational things I think that could have happened to me to have left and done that.
I think one of those great points that you just, I've got so much to unpackage here with that quick rundown. By the way, that's like years of hard work and grit that she just talked about. And one big point I want to make, especially with a lot of the listeners, is, what does it really mean when you're saying to go downrange, to serve? What were some of the things that you did that you felt, I know we've talked before, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. But what were some of those things that you thought? What were a part of the best of times?
It's funny. I read something today where, a veteran was like, I'm slowly sort of losing my memories of certain things. And I'm scared to death of that because, certain smells or certain songs will come on and it'll sort of spark these memories. But, from the best of times, it's like the camaraderie, working with people from different agencies or different services or even different countries in a coalition environment. And so what I did downrange, I was often single threaded as the sole NGA analyst. What we were doing was essentially targeting, finding the bad guys, if you will, using a methodology called activity-based intelligence, but from a geospatial perspective. So essentially, I would say this person lives here, he's been here, here's his pattern of life. And then, the cycle from there, and I don't mean intelligence cycle, but the find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze cycle would sort of, go from there. I'd done a number of things in preparation for that, weapons training, survival training, that sort of thing. Things that are hard, but, and then you go downrange and, I know it's different for everybody, the logistics aspect, but, you're alone, you're carrying all your stuff. You haven't slept in days. You haven't really showered in days. You sort of arrive and you get there and you're exhausted and, hungry and apprehensive because you're like, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into. But you create these bonds with people. My first deployment, the person that I worked for, the J2, the guy in charge of the intelligence shop, he's still one of my best friends. And that was 8 years ago that we met. I'm the godmother, to his son, basically.
That is amazing. And that is so true. I think that rings true with so many veterans or so many people that serve in national security and defense. And the fact that when they do have that moment overseas, it's almost like all of those barriers that exist elsewhere, they fall to the wayside because you have to rely on one another day in and day out. you get past kind of those, almost surface level issues and you go deep. And the bonds you create with people, those really deep bonds, they never go away. And I think that's awesome that you get to serve through the rest of that child's life as a part of their family almost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's truly wonderful. So the hardships, the living conditions, the long hours and missing home and things like that, it's hard, but I think it's so worth it. I look back and, there were times, right after I had left the community where I was like, well, I really wish I was back in Afghanistan. And I know a lot of people have that same sort of feeling, after they've left. They're like, I wish I was back. I miss it, and that's, I think, been documented a lot. But yeah, it's certainly real.
That and the simplicity. I just love the fact that, at some point, some meal was already made. I lived in a very small area. Less is more sometimes, right?
Yes.
No, you have made some great points here, and I know our listeners will definitely appreciate it. I want to dig a little bit more into kind of that pivot that you made. And once you got into working with the startup, not only you've talked about kind of the feelings and the emotions that come with that, and God bless the entrepreneurs out there. My hat's off to you, because that's taking a big leap forward. But as you started to gain momentum and you started to get your feet underneath you, what were those things that you did with respect to the profession that you're in right now that started to build that confidence and build your knowledge and skills and to the person that you've kind of become now?
I will say the first 6 months I was there, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I've never sold anything in my life. I, have no idea about cybersecurity. I remember being in a meeting, really a demo, and somebody asked me about APT 29, which is a advanced persistent threat actor. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And I just tried to fudge my way through, but it was very clear, that I needed to do a lot of work to really understand the different threats, what the customers were concerned about, what they were trying to do with our software, which was providing threat intelligence from the open and the dark web. And so I did a lot of work to understand the technical aspects of cybersecurity. I mean, certainly I can't code. I'm not an engineer. I can't do the reverse malware engineering or, vulnerability, testing, things like that. But, I did make it a point to really learn and gain a really good understanding of those threats so that I could confidently speak to our customers. And that actually did lead to some good wins, which really helped me to feel more confident. Like, okay, I'm doing something right. We're winning business. This is really great. After about a year, though, I had seen some other opportunities in the company, and I looked towards the customer success or post-sale side and saw that we actually had a number of public sector, especially federal government customers, but there wasn't a lot of focus on that. And I knew that with my background in the federal government as an analyst, I could really bring that to the table and really sort of consolidate the efforts there. So I moved over and I started the public sector team on the customer success side and really started to look at all the different aspects between the support element, the product management element. So, when our customers needed something in the product or wanted something, it was incumbent on me to be able to take those requirements and relay them to product management in a way that they could understand. And then, of course, relay back to the customers, what the verdict was really, in a way that they could understand, but also in training and in marketing as well. So I was doing a lot of jobs. I had a lot of hats on and I was working very hard, but it was kind of like my little area that I could grow. And we did. We grew a huge amount of the business. So it's been documented in the press, but Cybercom used to record a future. That was part of my efforts. And then some other Army units basically use it as well. And that was, because of my efforts as well as, other teammates too.
What a win. That is phenomenal. And that is awesome. And I think you understood not only the requirements, but also because you had that background and you knew where they were coming from. And even though, God bless, you couldn't do the 0110, and I am with you 100%. You can't always be an expert in all things. But if you start to maneuver in the operational and almost strategic levels, you provided that vision and you provided that forward thinking. I think you've taken that in all areas of your life, and I respect you for that so much. Would you mind also kind of talking to me about how you got into where you're at now with respect to Harvard and what you're doing with the amazing efforts to bring more phenomenal people into this cyber arena?
As I mentioned, when I was at NGA, I had been attending Georgetown University in the Security Studies program. I had been doing that program for about 3 years, but I never really finished because I would deploy and come back and, I'd have to, miss a semester. And I was also unable to, secure funding for some classes. So essentially, I had made it halfway through the program after 3 years. And so as we were leaving DC, I kind of thought, well, what am I going to do now? Here I was spending all this time towards this master's degree, and I wasn't going to be able to finish it. And so I started looking at other programs in Boston. And mind you, I don't have an Ivy League background at all. I went to the University of New Hampshire for my undergrad. My first master's degree in the Air Force was from Troy University online, which I know a lot of veterans and people are probably very familiar with that program. But I saw this program at Harvard Kennedy School. It was a mid-career MPA, so Master in Public Administration. It was a year long. And that, to me, was very palatable. And it spoke to someone at my level with my experience, but also to my drive as well. I kind of mentioned before how I felt like I couldn't really get ahead. And I was, kind of frustrated. And especially I was frustrated at the fact that I was leaving and I couldn't get a joint duty assignment because of some sort of, bureaucratic issues. I was like, I want to fix the intelligence community, which I know is a very grand declaration, but we need people to make those grand declarations. And thank you for doing it. That's awesome. You took a step forward. So you're like, I'm going to change it. And then what did you do? And so I applied. I was very lucky to get some really great recommendations. I got in to the Harvard Kennedy School, but I actually deferred a year so that I could, build a business at Recorded Future that I spoke about, the public sector team, which I was very happy I did that. So then I go to Harvard Kennedy School. I start my year program as a mid-career master's in public administration candidate. Mind you, I had my first baby that June. So by September, he was about 3 months. So here I was starting Harvard with a 3-month-old, which was so stressful. And, once again, there were times when I was like, I don't know if I can do this because I just felt like I couldn't be good at anything. I felt like I was not being a good enough mother, not being a good enough student, not being a good enough classmate. But, I was convinced to stay and, I was like, all right, I can do this. At the same time, I was taking Eric Rosenbach's class on cyber policy. So at Recorded Future, I really got interested in the cyber policy aspect of cybersecurity. There are a number of things I saw that I was like, we could fix this. We can make this better, that sort of thing. And so I took his class and I honestly don't know what he saw in me. I feel like I came to that class exhausted and stressed out. I had an hour commute every day to and from school at that point. But, he saw something and he looked at me for the role of the director of the cyber project at the Belfer Center. My predecessor, Michael Solmeyer, had left or was leaving in that October to go back in government. So there was an opening there. And so he, invited me to apply for that and I got into that role. And again, brand new experience. I had never been in academia before. I didn't know what I was doing. I still sort of don't. I feel like I'm better at it. I know the landscape a little bit more. I've gone through the practice of trying to raise money and things like that. But also it's been a role in which, my profile has been elevated, which, for a lot of people coming out of the intelligence community, even all these years later, it's still sort of a scary prospect. So, just over the year, I've just sort of like muddled through learning how to be in this space, dealing with, a lot of different challenges, but again, transformational. It's been so incredible, the different experiences I've been able to have while here.
And not only transformational, I think you spoke on so many key points that most people in their very start of their job or midway through, they really kind of run up against that, perfection is the enemy of good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we hold ourselves to such a high standard that we expect everything to be an A+. And you know what? In life, it just isn't. But you can still learn a lot from something where you get a C, something where you get a B, and then those things where you have to stay and sustain at the A level. It's almost like juggling glass balls, right? You're constantly making sure you're moving in the motion that's, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You're making it work. But what I really enjoyed is that you had someone out there that saw that spark in you. And that is akin, of course, to mentorship. I love talking about this topic because it's so important that we look for those people. And not only do we look for them, we find others, behind us that we can help lift and elevate. Tell me kind of how your best mentorship relationship worked, and then kind of what you've done as a leader in this field to continue to mentor others. Because I always see you in this space, and every time I see your name, I know that product is going to be quality, it's going to be of value, and it's going to be good. So go ahead and kick us off with something to do with mentors.
Thank you. I think it's such a good point. I'm so glad that you brought it up. It takes someone to see you. I feel like in my, in the time leading up to this point, I had definitely worked for some great bosses and, done some really amazing things. But you're right. I think it does take someone who's like, you know what, that person has potential. And I would like to, give that person a chance at on a pretty big stage in a pretty big role. So, I remember when Eric first sort of asked me about it, I went in for an advisory meeting and, he asked me what I was going to do after graduation. I was like, I'm just going to go back to Recorded Future, I think. And, he presented this opportunity. I was in shock for a good day, honestly. I was like, I can't believe that he would think that I could do this. I was just astounded because I knew it was such a big opportunity. I didn't quite know the different things I would get to do, but I knew it was really big. And so, and having that trust with someone, I think is really, really important, especially with someone like him where, and the whole center where there's some really big names and people with a lot of influence. And I will say it's been, for me, kind of a challenge to get to a place where I feel comfortable being among such heavy hitters and almost in, I won't say a casual way, but to be able to have this trusting sort of conversation, where I can be very honest and be myself, really. Because I've always had that sort of deference thing. Maybe it's from the military. I'm not sure. And so, to be able to work with him and, for him to sort of give his trust and say, you know what, this is your project. You can do what you want with it, knowing full well, again, that I'm not an academic. I don't have a PhD and that I'm relatively new to the space. He gave me that opportunity and I will always be grateful for that. And then on the flip side, as you said, again, my experience of being in the IC and coming out of it. And, I didn't have, a network of mentors or anything like that when I was in. And I actually tried to create a mentorship initiative at NGA right as I was leaving, to be honest with you. But I pitched it to Sue Gordon and she was very supportive. But unfortunately, I couldn't really see it all the way through because I had to leave. But so when I found out about NatSec Girl Squad, I was like, I'm all in because I want to now be able to help other women in this space and provide thoughts or, feedback or, if I can connect someone, I'm happy to do that because I wish I had that when I was in, although I think those experiences obviously formed, my thinking today. But yeah, I'm very active in NatSec Girl Squad. And then once I return from maternity leave, which I'm on maternity leave right now, I'm going to be a mentor with Girl Security, which is an organization for younger girls and younger women who are interested in national security. So I hope to do that as well.
Lauren, thanks for mentioning those two awesome organizations. In the show notes, I'll have the links to NatSec Girl Squad and Girl Security, both of which are very active organizations that are working to bring more women and diversity as a whole into the national security space and getting more younger people, especially girl security, to understand, hey, national security, everyone can be a part of this. And I think it's pretty phenomenal with the founders and the things that they've done in a short period of time to really raise awareness.
Absolutely.
Lauren, we've just got a couple minutes left. If there's anything you'd like to share with the audience about your views on leadership and where you see our next steps with our country going.
So for the leadership aspect, I always used to say that I think a great leader has vision and they take care of their people, because you can't really execute that vision unless you have people working on it with you, not for you, but with you. And in order for, I think, people to get the best out of their people, then you need to take care of them, whether that's through professional development and, helping them with certain aspects of their career. But also, I'd add to that a real commitment to diversity, I think is really important now for leadership, and of course, character. So looking forward to, what this time means for our country, I'm just very, very, very hopeful that, we can sort of move past the events of the last 4 years and start to come together and start to, realize what is national security, because there's a lot of aspects or a lot of things that have happened, especially in the last year, to really lay bare what national security, I think, means for our country. It's not just military. It's not just government. It is cybersecurity, which is not, again, just government or military. It is incumbent upon all of us to raise the level of cybersecurity across our nation. It's also health security and information security, economic security. So all these things are so important. And so I'm hopeful that this transition and this next administration recognizes all of that. And also, I'm remiss, I wanted to say that diversity, again, is national security. This isn't, I was talking with a colleague earlier, this isn't a nice to have, this is a need to have. It's an imperative for our national security. So I'm very committed to these ideas going forward. As someone who, like you, has served my country, both in uniform and outside, it's very, very important to me.
Lauren, thanks so much for that. And I really appreciate the points that you're driving home, that there's much more to national security than just one kind of boilerplate linear looking at defense. I mean, we have an option here before us to really holistically look with a broader view of those things that really impact our country. And the work that you've done in the cyber realm is really making us safer. So I am giving you a verbal hat tip today for all the things that you've done in and out of uniform and what you're doing to, again, grow that next generation of leaders, because it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of look around and say, I'm ready for the next step. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us here today on Candid Leadership. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a real honor and a pleasure to speak with you today, Candace.
Thanks.